welcome to Non-Inkables. This is episode 6 of the podcast. It's been a busy weekend. I feel like I'm still tired from it. So let's get into it. All right. So in past week news, we went to construct a tournament on Thursday at VPC. And we went to SCG Con in Vegas over the weekend, which is why I'm so tired. And then also on Friday, I released the Encanto video. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. It talks about kind of definitely spoilers from the movie, but also kind of explains all the Encanto cards we got this set and how they relate to the movie, how the people's plot lines and abilities in the movie relate to their abilities in the cards. And I will be making more videos like that about different movies going forward. I think probably my next one will either be Emperor's New Groove or Hercules because I love those movies. And in upcoming news this week, we don't really have anything for sure scheduled in terms of real life competitions. I wanted to go to a sealed competition on Sunday, but it is also Father's Day. So the likelihood that it's going to get canceled is pretty high. And there is the Lorecast tomorrow. So official Disney Lorecast, it's going to be broadcast at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I think that's like 1 p.m. Eastern. I just look at the Pacific time because that's the time zone I'm in. Unfortunately, so I was going to do like a live reaction, but unfortunately, I also scheduled my daughter's pediatrician appointment at the exact same time. And that seems to be more important, I think. So I will be going to that instead. But if somebody else is going to do a live reaction and maybe upload the video, I will watch that and give my thoughts. I don't think they're going to have a recording of it after to watch. And so that would be the only way to see it. Or if someone can just write a summary about everything that they announce, I think Mushu Report usually does a pretty good one. So I will look at that. And thank you to those people who are able to do that for those of us who are either at work or doing other things at that time. So let's talk about this past week. Oh, the other news is that I made it to Diamond in Pixelborn ranked. So that had been my goal for this season. And I was like, well, if Pixelborn is going away, I should really work on that. Also, because Brian got to Diamond before me. And I was like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it too. He got there using Emerald Steel. I got there using Ruby Amethyst. So Ruby Amethyst is the deck that I have been playing this past week, and I put in so many games, so many games. And I don't even know if I have any like general comments in terms of what I learned from it. I mean, just the same. I think a major problem I had during testing and also in the real life games is that sometimes I would end up with no one drop to play. And then the only two drop I had was Snake, which is unplayable if you don't have a one drop. So I would have nothing to play on turns 1 and 2. And that was horrid. I also had really bad luck with my mulligans. So I would mulligan away like things that were like 5 or 6 ink. And then return to my hand would be like Be Prepared. Or another Be Prepared. Or like a Medusa, something you can't ink that's very high in ink. So kind of annoying. And so I think that made my mulligans much more conservative going forward into the weekend. And really, Ruby Amethyst is supposed to be like a super consistent deck where you can mulligan aggressively. But I think with my luck, it just didn't work out. And I tried several versions of a Ruby Amethyst. So some with Be King Undisputed, some with Tremaine, some with Medusa. And I ended up settling on kind of like 2 versions of the deck. And so I played a different one on Thursday versus Friday versus Saturday, but some combo where my one drop was usually Chernabog Followers or Magic Broom, both draw cards. My two drop was either a Flynn Rider or a Madam Mim Snake. For a brief period, I think on Friday, I also put in 2 Pegasus, the evasive 2-cost Ruby 3/1 to deal with. I felt like I needed more ways to deal with Diablo besides Brawl, but then on Friday, that card just died immediately. It never stuck. And so I took it out, put Madam Mim Snake back in as a 4 of. And then my 3 drops would be a Brawl. So 4 Brawls, 4 Sisus, 4 Friends on the Other Side, 4 Madam Mim Foxes. And then 4 drops are the standard Merlin Goat, Merlin Rabbit, Queen's Castle. And then 5 drops Maui. And then my 4 Fun card, which is 3 Jim Hawkins to bring out another Queen's Castle. And then 6 drop is 3 Madame Medusas. and 7-drop is 4 Be Prepared, and then I had 2 more Yzmas for fun. And I think Yzma is such a good card and totally overlooked. So it's Yzma Scary Beyond All Reason, and she is technically a shift target, although I never shifted her, and she is a 4/4 quest for 2. But her ability is when you play that character, you can shuffle another chosen character into the player's deck, and that player draws 2 cards. So I used it both on myself and on my opponents. So I used it on my opponents to shuffle their Tamatoa back into their deck or to shuffle their Mufasa back into their deck. So the benefit of shuffling the Mufasa is not banished, so it doesn't bring out another character. Your opponent does get 2 cards, but sometimes you just need that character off and it doesn't matter if they have the cards. And then I also used it on my own characters, so sometimes I would use it on a Merlin goat and I would get a lore and 2 cards, or I would use it on a Merlin rabbit and I would get 3 cards, 1 for the Merlin rabbit, 2 for the Yzma. And so really the all-star of my deck, I would say. And I think when I was testing this deck on Pixelborn, my hardest matchup was Green Steel, just for because of their discard ability. And I did try one game where when they had their Diablo out, I didn't draw like the cards that you would get from Rabbit or from having someone in Castle just to see if that would work. It did not. It was horrible. And so after that, I would just be like, fine, they get a card, I get a card, whatever. They don't have enough ink to play all these cards anyways. So hopefully my cards are better. And I feel like my major takeaway from Green Steel is you just gotta try to last until the end game and then like the later game, because as a Ruby Amethyst player, your cards are better in the later game than I would say Emerald Steel, but it's lasting until then is hard. And throughout my testing, I realized I love Be Prepared. And so I think at one point I only had 3 or maybe 2, and I had 2 Be King Undisputeds. And I was like, no, I need 4 Be Prepared. I need to see this card consistently. And I think a lot of the decks, Ruby Amethyst, are not playing 4 Be Prepared. They have opted for more Be King Undisputed. And when I was testing it, the problem with Be King Undisputed is that you can't choose which character they get rid of. And in many cases, when I would want to play it, they would have like a little Ursula, a Diablo, a Bucky, a Pegasus, and you want to get rid of like anything but the little Ursula. And of course, they would pick the little Ursula because the card is the least valuable to them. And so I found that kind of annoying and I wanted to be able to choose. And so I ended up taking that card out. I also would end up with that card in my hand and at 3 ink, so unable to use it, which was also very annoying. And so Green Steel, I would say, is the hardest, and I was probably 50-50 against them, both a little bit better on the draw surprise. I was 50-50 against them, both on the draw and on the play, honestly. And then with the ramp decks, you just gotta be a little bit more aggressive and quest, 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 quest. Also, the Flynn Rider 2-drop with the Sisu 3-drop combo. So it's the Inkable Sisu that has the strength that is equivalent to however many cards they have. That combo is very good on the play. On the draw, not so much, because if they put their Sisu out, usually the person who's on the draw has more cards. And so not super great on the draw, but on the play, all-star, total all-star. And then on Thursday we went to Victory Point. So using that deck, I was able to get to Diamond status, which is very exciting. And that will probably be my final status when Pixelborn ends. I don't think I have the time to grind enough to get to like Grandmaster before Pixelborn is done. But maybe when they do Pixelborn Connect, your status will just carry over. I don't know. We'll see. And then at Victory Point Cafe, we played a constructed tournament. It was 3 rounds of Swiss, best of 2. The first round I played against Brian, and he smoked me, as he always does when he plays Emerald Steel. The first game, I mulliganed my high cost cards and got 2 Be Prepared and a Madame Medusa in return. And so I didn't have very many things to ink, and it was a horrible experience. And then in the second game, he had double Diablo and Bucky. And so, yeah, I lost horribly. And that was actually the first time we've ever played each other in a tournament. The second game I played against a Emerald Sapphire deck, which was like a super aggressive questing deck. So everything quested for 2 or 3 lore, which was insane. But then everything traded. So when you killed sorry, not killed. When you banished anything, it wasn't like you could banish something and then the next turn you would be able to use that same character banish something else. Everything was like when challenged gets 3 attack or like is already high attack, low life. So even if you spend all your time banishing everything, they've already quested their 3 lore for that one turn. And then I think turn 4, they put down like McDuck Manor. So they had like some pretty high strength locations as well. And so the first game I lost, and that was really, I think, a misplay on my part because I didn't realize how aggressive they were. And so I had banished my broom to draw a card, and I really should have just kept it out. And then I think also I had like quested with Chernobog Follower to draw a card, and then later I sang with another character, and I should have sung first, and then I could have saved Chernobog Followers to attack the manor. But all in all, okay. And then the last round I played against a purple steel broom deck, except that I think so this person is pretty new to Lorcana, so he doesn't have that many cards. And so he said he built the deck mainly because he had gotten 2 Illumineers quests and it had the broom Yensid in there, and so he had that. So I think he only had 2 Yensids in his deck, and so I think because of that the deck suffered. It wasn't as consistent, so he wasn't able to hit the broom stuff properly. Also, I don't think he had ever seen a Jim Hawkins card or a Merlin Rabbit or a Merlin Goat, so he didn't know like their abilities. And so I won 0-2 against that person. But I mean, I feel like that's not something to brag about against winning against someone who's very new to the game and doesn't even know what your cards do. But overall, pretty fun. And then on over the weekend, we went to SCG Con in Las Vegas. So we hadn't been able to get tickets to Chicago. And I was like, oh, we'll just go to this other one. And then maybe like all the really good people will be at Chicago, and so it won't be as crazy competitive. It was pretty competitive. The vibe was definitely different, I would say, compared to like our set championships and stuff. Everyone was very serious and like constantly every time you would sit down to play someone, they'd be like, "What's your record? What's your record?" And you're just like, I don't remember." Yeah, so they were pretty intense. The first we ended up competing in 2 constructed tournaments. We were going to do a third, but then by the third day, I was like, I'm kind of over this. I don't really like my deck anymore, and it's not like super fun to play. And so we decided not to play and just kind of hang out. So the first day was a 1K. There was 35 people. I ended up placing 9th, which is, I think, very good. It was best of 3 in 50 minutes, so I think that made it difficult for people playing like control and ramp decks because they would run out of time. The first round I played against a Sapphire Steel deck, and I lost 0-2. They ended up winning the whole thing, so I don't feel bad that I lost to them. But the first game, they kind of ran away with it and then lucky dimed, and I was able to get out like my Flynn Rider Sisu, but then they put out, I think I got a Flynn Rider out, but I was on the draw, and then they put out their Smee, which ruined my Flynn Rider plans. I don't know, I feel like they had a counter for everything I wanted to do. Second game, I was close, but then they lucky dimed, so freaking lucky dime. Round 2, I played a Emerald Steel deck, and I actually won 2-0, which was kind of surprising for me because I usually don't do that well against Emerald Steel. And I think for both, the first game I aggressively quested, and so I was just ahead and they couldn't catch up. And then the second game, I did a lot of like goat bounce shenanigans and castles and that kind of thing. And it was very close because I have like that we were at 18-18, and then I think I got to goat bounce to win. The third round, I played an Emerald Steel deck, but it wasn't like a super discardy one. So it had, I think, both Bucky and Prince John, and then it had like Sheriff of Nottingham and the 7-cost Simba Steel card that lets you draw 2 cards or deal damage, and it also had Ariel Sonic Warrior. So kind of an interesting deck, and I won against that deck both games, but it was pretty close. So 20-16 and also 20-15, but it was a very interesting deck, and I quite enjoyed playing a more interesting deck compared to the standard like discard. The fourth round, I played a Sapphire Steel deck, and I basically just aggressively quested and was lucky that in the first game they didn't see their ramp and they also didn't see their dime. And then the second game, they saw their ramp, but they didn't see their dime, and I was able to get rid of their Tamatoa. So lucky also. The fifth game, I lost. I played an Emerald Steel, Standard, Bucky, Diablo, discard, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, was not fun. And then the last round, my person didn't show up at all, so I got a buy. And I did actually end up playing somebody who was playing a Steel Sapphire deck for fun, but I don't think they normally run that deck, and so I won because I don't think they knew how to run it very well. And so I ended up placing ninth. There was another girl who was playing that day, and she was like at the top tables the whole time. And she told me she lost her last game, and it pushed her all the way down to like 10th, which kind of sucks because I definitely thought she was going to be top eight. And I was actually very happy to be ninth because I feel like it was a very good score, but also I didn't have to play in the top eight cut because by that time I was very hungry and tired. And so we went and got dinner instead. And then the next day there was a 5K, and I think it was like a lot more people. Let me see. The next day it was a 5K, and there ended up being 64 people. I did not do well at all. I ended up placing like 43rd, I think. No, 41st. I ended up playing 41st, 41 out of 63. And it was a long day. People were super intense. The first one I played was a mirror match. And the first game, I think I lost because I just misplayed a part. And then the second game, I was like very stressed that we were going to run out of time because it was best of three. And we were already at like 16 minutes when we started the second game, like 16 minutes left. And then that person at the end told me I was inking too much because I did have a lot of ink, but I was also inking because I had a ton of cards I wanted to play and I had a ton of cards, so I could ink. But he told me that I was inking too much and that I should ink less and I should stop at 8 ink. I was at like 13 ink by the end, but then it also let me do like a lot of really cool combos. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that advice. I think he's probably right. And normally I don't ink that much, but I just had so many cards and I wanted to play all my stuff. And I really think that I would have won if I had not misplayed. That was my bad. But I like that I made him sweat. Also, he told me before we even started, he's like, "Oh, do you play a lot?" And he's like, "I've won like 20 tournaments." And I was like, "Geez, okay. Thanks for letting me know." Yeah, there were a lot of championship mats on the second day, and I was there with my champion mat, which I think is the superior mat. The second round, it was a mirror match. It was someone who was pretty new to Lorcana, and I think she had just copied a deck online and was playing that. Third round, I played a Ruby Sapphire deck, and I lost 1-2. That freaking lucky dime, I must say. I hate it. Fourth round, I played an Emerald Steel, and I lost because I had no cards. I think the first game they Bucky double Diablo'd me, and they felt kind of bad. I forgot what they did the second game, but I just didn't have enough lore. The fifth round, I played another Emerald Steel deck, and it was 1-2. And I think the one game I won, it was because I had a double Queen's Castle I had 3 Queen's Castles that I played. And then by that time by round 5, I really was like, I'm over this. Because I feel like when you play the ramp decks, they just ramp and then they lucky dime and they just ignore you. And then when you play the Emerald Steel decks, they just play their Bucky, they shift their Diablo, they get cards, you have no cards, and it's no fun. And the last round, I played a purple steel, so amethyst steel deck, and it was a Titan deck that the person had made, and that was super fun. I won 2-0, but more importantly, I think it was more interesting just because he had different cards, there was different combos that I had not seen before. I also love Hercules and the Titans, and so I do want to also make a Titan deck, but I think it was just more fun. And I was talking to that person about it, and he was like, yeah, my partner was going to play like a ramp deck, but I told him to play his mouse deck just because it's not fun when you're just playing solitaire and ignoring the person you're playing against. And I was like, that is totally true. I wish that the meta decks were more interactive because I think that is more fun. And right now I feel like the top meta decks are kind of just doing their own thing. They don't care what you do. Or maybe it's just the vibe of the people there. So that game was really fun. playing against the Titan deck. And yeah, so that was the end of day 2. And then day 3, we were going to compete in a constructed, but then by that time I was like, I don't really want to play this Ruby Amethyst deck anymore. And we hadn't really brought any other cards to kind of trade out cards or to change our decks. And I was like, I'd rather just sleep in and kind of chill. And so we did that. And then we went and looked around the convention center on the last day just to kind of see. And it was stinky. Like, I thought, so going into this convention, I was like, oh, maybe like, ha ha ha, there's this like a stereotype that the people who play trading card games are really stinky. I was like, ha ha ha, I'm sure that in this day and age, everyone uses deodorant. Like, people shower, it's not going to be a big deal. It's a giant room. And like the first day, there were like a few people who were a little iffy smelling, and then like some people smelled like wet towels, but it was like very few and far between. I was like, haha, this is just a stereotype. Day 2 was like a little bit more people. And then day 3, we just walked around to look at like the booths and stuff. And that room was so stinky. Like, you walk into the room and it's just like BO and wet towel smell. And like right next door to where the conference was, there was a handball competition going on, and people like running and playing handball and sweating. And that room smelled pristine. No hint of BO at all. And then the room with the convention, with all the people playing cards, was so smelly. I was like, I'm so glad we did not do a competition on the last day, because I don't know if I would have been able to sit here in the smell. I mean, I probably would have gotten used to it just being in the room, but like, it was stinky. So overall, I don't think we're going to go to another SCG Con, just because the vibes were not it. People were so intense and so focused on winning. And like every single time you would play someone, they'd be like, what's your record? What's your record? Oh, are you going to drop? Are you going to drop? And you're like, no, I'm here. I paid money to join this competition so I could play people, because I want to play the game. Yeah. And then everyone was just like so focused on winning. And they're like, oh, if you get this, you could still make it. And I was like, I don't care about making it. I'm not at that level. Like, I'm not here to compete and win money. I'm here to just play the game and play against different decks. Yeah, so definitely a different vibe. And also, I feel like normally when you go to like a local tournament or probably a Disney Lorcana challenge, there's people who are like more into Disney, and they're like, oh, I like this character, I like blah blah blah. Whereas I feel like at this convention, everyone is very into, what can this card do for me? So yeah, so that was our experience. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing this week in terms of YouTube content, and also what competitions we may go to. We're both testing out an Amethyst Steel deck right now, and then I'm probably going to be making a YouTube video either about Hercules or Emperor's New Groove is my goal, but not totally decided yet. But there will be a video. So as always, let me know what else you guys want to hear me talk about, and keep shuffling. And hopefully you don't end up with a whole handful of uninkables like me. All right, bye.